brothers and sisters. This morning, as you may have observed, I'll be tackling the subject, LNG-wide, millennials and social media. Before I get into the presentation this morning, I just thought I should share with you a personal testimony. And it is just to indicate through this personal testimony the impact that LNG-wide has had on my own life, in my own life. I've had the privilege of visiting Battle Creek 2 times. And the first time I went to Battle Creek was when I went with my wife. And as the tour guide was taking us around in the village there, I was inspired by the stories that I heard of our pioneers, the things that they did and things that happened in the past. When we went to Ellen White's house, I was mesmerized and intrigued by what the tour guide shared with us. Yesterday or the other day, one of the presenters spoke to us about, I think it's Dr. Nix, spoke to us about the house where Ellen White lived. 2 stories, and the top floor, we managed to go to it. As we were entering the room, her bedroom, I was actually surprised that there is a small room as you enter the main bedroom. There is a bedroom within the bedroom. And we were told that the small bedroom is where James White would sleep when Ellen White is busy getting inspiration from heaven, so that there is no distraction or interference. And I thought to myself, but that's not good for marriage. James White was very tall, I'm told. And to enter into that small bedroom before you get into the main bedroom, I suppose he had to bend over to enter that small bedroom. But when the tour guide was explaining to us how busy Ellen G. White was and how preoccupied she was as she was trying to put on paper the visions and the inspirations God had shared with her, I was really inspired and blessed. But one thing that touched me the most, and this is what I want to share with you, this is the crux of my testimony, is that we were told that at any given time in Ellen White's bedroom, which was quite sizable, she would have other people's children in that bedroom. She would take care of other people's children. In her extensive travels, in her writings, and everything that she had to do, the things she had to juggle, she still found time to take care of other people's children. And that was my inspiration. And my wife and I, as we were leaving Battle Creek, that's what we took away with us. And that inspired us to make sure that, yes, we are pastors, yes, we minister to people, but we should come closer to the people and be, incarnate in the lives of other people. And that inspired me. So I believe in the writings of Ellen G. White because I believe she was inspired. And I'm glad that this symposium came to Helderberg College, where we are training our young people, particularly theology students, to know God and to be aware of our teachings as the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And this training, I believe, and I'm glad there are also delegates to this symposium, I believe that it will help them, it will enhance their understanding of the Bible and the spirit of prophecy, because when you go out there, they will meet people who believe in the spirit of prophecy. But if they leave Helderberg College and they themselves are not believing in the spirit of prophecy, how are they going to make an impact out there? There will be a collision course. Millennials, also known as the Generation Y, were born in the period 1977 to 1994. Other experts in the subject place this cohort in the early 80s and the year 2000. William J. Schroer describes the millennials as people who are fascinated by technology. These people are not brand loyal. They go for anything that makes them interested in those things. Not loyal to a particular brand. They are sophisticated. We have 28 fundamental beliefs as a church. As I was preparing my paper on this subject, I thought, let me just zoom in on 2 of our fundamental beliefs. Their titles are the gift of prophecy and growing in Christ. You know those 2. Let us just revisit those 2 fundamental beliefs. The scriptures testify, that is fundamental belief 18. The scriptures testify that one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit is prophecy. This gift is an identifying mark of the remnant church, and we believe it was manifested in the ministry of Ellen G. White. Her writings speak with prophetic authority and provide comfort, guidance, instruction, and correction to the church. They also make clear that the Bible is the standard by which all teaching and experience must be tested. Fundamental belief 11 says, in this new freedom in Jesus, we are called to grow into the likeness of his character, communicating with him daily in prayer, feeding on his word, meditating on it and on his providence, singing his praises, gathering together for worship, and participating in the mission of the church. I thought that was important for us, just to remind ourselves what we believe in relation to the spirit of prophecy and the Bible. After looking at those 2 fundamental beliefs, we who are in the older or who are part of the older generations, we may not find anything funny or strange about those fundamental beliefs. But the people that we work with, I work with young people on a day-to-day basis. Some of them find these fundamental beliefs antiquated, impractical, and mostly because they argue, some of them, that Ellen White's writings, if they were important, how come they're not part of the canon? Now, let's remember what we said earlier on. Millennials are not loyal to any particular brand. They are not loyal to any particular worldview. You may try and convince them that this is the gospel truth. Until they internalize it themselves, until they chart their own path, as it were, you will never convince them of any other path they need to follow. Now, the question is, as leaders of the church, as pastors, how do we then influence the millennials to appreciate the writings of Ellen G. White? How do they even begin to embrace this person that we call the prophetess of the church of God? And my crucial assumption here, as I present this, and even in my paper, is that Ellen White's writings permeate different epochs and have the capacity to be relevant to all human experiences. And I'm saying this morning, Ecclesiastes 1 verse 9 says, there is nothing new under the sun. Regardless of the uniqueness of this cohort called millennials, my declaration this morning is that all human beings need the Lord and the Savior, and our needs are the same. And therefore, this presentation and the paper that I have written focuses on 3 key things. Ellen White loved young people. And this is seen in what she has written about young people. Ellen White was not afraid to tackle hot potatoes that were assailing young people of her time. She tackled these issues with boldness, but with love at the same time, and with tact. And the second thing that this paper looks at is to come up with guidelines on how to lead young people to develop interest in the writings of Ellen G. White and in developing interest in Ellen White herself. And the third aspect of my presentation is, how do we use social media, or how do we encourage young people, millennials, to utilize social media to spread the gospel? Because I believe if they use social media to spread the gospel, this will solidify their faith. They will develop more love for the spirit of prophecy. There are many things. There's a plethora of writings on issues of young people when you look at the spirit of prophecy. But I've chosen to look at just 4. And those are making choices. What is Ellen White saying to our young people about making choices? Idleness. What does she say about idleness? Loneliness. Guarding the avenues of the soul. I remember when I was growing up reading messages to young people, that used to be, the mantra of the day. Guarding the avenues of the soul. What does Ellen White say to our young people today or even then? Later on in this presentation, I will try to extrapolate some principles which I think can help our millennials to glean powerful lessons from what she wrote many years ago. As I said, we have books like Messages to Young People, which she has penned, and we have Letters to Young Lovers, which is a compilation of her writings on issues affecting young people. Let's look at what she says with regards making choices, and in particular in marriage. She says to young men who are intending to get married, she said that many years ago. She said they must choose, these young men must choose young ladies who bear who will share their share, or who will have their share of responsibilities carried on their shoulders. They will be able to bear their own responsibilities. And then she says they need to choose young ladies whose influence will enable and refine these young people, these young men themselves. In other words, when they marry these young ladies, they must complement them, they must be able to refine their own characters. And then she says to young ladies who are intending to get married, before giving her hand in marriage, every woman should inquire whether he with whom she is about to unite her destiny is worthy. What has been his past record? Is his life pure? Is the love which he expresses of a noble, elevated character? Or is it a mere emotional fondness? Has he the traits of character that will make her happy? Can she find true peace and joy in his affection? Will she be allowed to preserve her individuality, or must her judgment and conscience be surrendered to the control of her husband? That's what she said about young ladies who want to get married. Then when it comes to, again on marriage, she says, marriage is something that will influence and affect your life both in this world and in the world to come. A sincere Christian will not advance his plans in this direction without the knowledge that God approves his cause. Now let's look at what she says about making choices in other areas of life. She said, when she was referring to the experience of Lot, we remember that in the book of Genesis, Lot, when given an opportunity by Abraham to choose a place where he would settle because their headmen were fighting, and Lot decided to choose the greener pastures, a place that was looking beautiful. And little did he know that the choice he had made would affect him later. She says, it was Lot's privilege to inquire, to be very careful where he would go. Very careful, or in regard to the society he chose for his family. But without reference to the inhabitants, he chose a land that was beautiful in situation. That promised great returns. Lot went in rich and came forth with nothing as the result of his choice. It makes every difference whether people place themselves in position where they will have the very best help of correct influences, or whether they choose temporary advantages. That's what she said about the experience of Lot. And then on the issue of idleness, Proverbs 6 verse 6 says, go to the end, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. And Ellen White corroborates the words of the wise man Solomon by saying in this book, Adventist Home, page 88, the idea that ignorance of useful employment is an essential characteristic of the true gentleman or lady is contrary to the design of God in the creation of man. Then she says, idleness is a sin, and ignorance of common duties is the result of folly, which afterlife will give ample occasion to bitterly regret. That's what she says about idleness. What about loneliness? She says, it is the faithful performance of everyday duties that brings the satisfaction and peace that comes to the true home worker. Those who neglect to bear part of the responsibilities of the home are the ones who are troubled with loneliness and discontent. For they have not learned the truth that those who are happy because they share the daily routine of work which rests upon the mother or other members of the family. Many are living and learned the most useful lessons which it is essential for their future good to understand. If we surrender, she says, our lives to his service, we can never be placed in a position for which God has not made provision. Whatever may be our situation, we have a guide to direct our way. Whatever our perplexities, we have a sure counselor. Whatever our sorrow, bereavement, or loneliness, we have a sympathizing friend. I thought that was a wonderful statement. And then on guarding the avenues of the soul, Ellen White said to the young people, all should guard the senses, lest Satan give victory over them, for these are the avenues of the soul. You will have to become a faithful sentiment over your eyes, ears, and all your senses if you would control your mind and prevent vain and corrupt thoughts from staining your soul. The power of grace alone can accomplish this most desirable work. Let's look at the characteristics of the millennials. Before we do that, you need to know that there are other generations. There is Generation X that comes just before the millennials, and then there's Generation Z that comes after the millennials. I thought let us look at both these cohorts, the Generation X and Generation Z, before we delve deeper into the millennials. The Generation X, these are born between 1966 and 1976. I think most of us are in that category here. These are sometimes referred to as the lost generation because they are exposed to divorce and other perplexities of life. They have a high level of skepticism. That's what it is said of this group. They are the best educated of all generations. Let's look at Generation Z. These were born between 1995 and 2012. Generation Z kids will grow up with a highly sophisticated media and computer environment and will be more internet savvy and expert than their Generation Y forerunners. These are some of the characteristics of the millennials. These young people are high achievers. We are told they are avid consumers. They appreciate civic duty. They have confidence. They don't mind diversity. They love extreme fun. Now, what I found interesting is that it is said of the millennials, they have high morals, highly tolerant, hotly competitive. They like personal attention, self-confident. They have social abilities. They are members of the global community. They are also educated people. They are extremely techno-savvy, extremely spiritual. They are optimistic, they are realistic, and they are street smart. Now, I was actually surprised to see many positive traits coming from this cohort. Very often we stereotype millennials. We think it's young people who love, bad things, who enjoy engaging in rogue behavior. But it was interesting to discover that they have good qualities and they love things that are good and positive. And then someone said about the millennials, these are ambitious, but not entirely focused. Sometimes they lose their focus. They find freedom in teams. They enjoy working within teams. They are attached to their gadgets and parents. They are diversity focused. They have not lived without computers. They were born in the age of computers. They know nothing else but computers. They are eager to spend money. Ask me about it. I have 2 millennials in my house. Fiercely independent, innovative. They think outside of the box. They are very loyal to peers. Very. Don't criticize their friends in their presence. They will fight you. They are open to new ideas. They respect given for competency, not title. They don't respect people's titles. They just respect competency. Whether you are a pastor or you are a director or you are a vice chancellor, they do not care about the title. They care about your competency. They have a strong sense of entitlement, and they want to please other people. Having looked at the characteristics and the traits of the millennials, let's look at what social media is. The social part, someone said, refers to interacting with other people by sharing information with them and receiving information from them. The media part refers to an instrument of communication like the internet, while TV, radio, and newspapers are examples of more traditional forms of media. Now today, many of us, even those who are sitting in this audience, we are using social media. And the most popular social media platforms that I know are Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, WhatsApp, Viber, YouTube, and there are many others. But these are the most common, at least here in South Africa. Let's look at the benefits of using social media. Marty Thuba shared the following thoughts when she was addressing pastors on the benefits of social media. She says, social media offers a studio for your voice. I like that. It offers a studio for your voice, producing and calling forth your creative efforts and enlarging your audience. Which pastors do not want to reach more people with their passion for Christ and His Word? Social media amplifies your voice with new and often surprising audiences. The potential of social media is the opportunity to have your voice reach out and touch people further away than you thought possible. People near or far will have a chance to hear you through social media. The possibilities for expanding the range of your voice through social media are worth exploring for that reason alone, she says. Pujic, another author, and I got this from the Ministry magazine, he wrote an article, and Miroslav Pujic says, social media has the following benefits. Firstly, he says tolerance. Tolerance. Networks are good for handling diversity. You tolerate one another on social media. You may not know each other, but you are tolerant of each other. The second thing Pujic says, friendship. Networks connect people. The third thing, communal. Groups are created so that people join and feel comfortable in a group. Equal, small versus big. He says individuals or businesses are equal on social media. There's no one who's big, there's no one who's small on social media. The ground is level. Fair, he says. There is no censorship on social media because everyone gets an opportunity to share their own views. No one judges you. There is fairness. Global. There are no borders or obstacles in connecting with other people. Those are the benefits of social media. But there is a danger also if we do not guide our millennials, because they may veer off the road and find themselves entering into dangerous territory if they're not given guidelines on how to look at social media and utilize social media. Again, Pujic says, when he talks about the dangers of social media, internet addiction. People get addicted to internet, especially social media. Another danger, less contact with family members. People become isolated. We live in silos. Members of the same family, you may find them sitting in the same room, but each one looking at social media, accessing social media. Feelings of loneliness and depression, because you are all alone, you are always looking at other people's views on social media, aloof from reality. He says this happens because people who use internet or social media extensively lose sight of living in the real world. They live in a virtual world, a land of fantasy. The things they glean from social media, oh, my friend in the United States of America is doing this, has this gadget, or is exposed to this. How I wish in South Africa I could also be having the same experience. Far from reality, oblivious to the fact that The context here is different from the context of the friend they are chatting with on social media. They are less active in social life. People who love to just dwell on social media, they are less active in real life. Exposure to sexually explicit material. That's another scourge that comes with careless use of social media. Online victimization. Have you heard of that one? Online victimization, where people are victimized by people they don't know, but through social media. Other people call it cyberbullying, where you are bullied by people you don't know, and you follow their dictates as if they were right close to you. Fluidity of the virtual identity, he says. People can present themselves in an entirely different way from what they are really like by using false identity. On social media, people become schizophrenic. Today I choose to be this person, tomorrow I choose to be that person. And some of our young people, millennials, may be gullible and not be aware that there are these challenges and dynamics that come with the use of social media. I spoke about cyberbullying. I know that some young people in South Africa, at least, are experiencing this cyberbullying. Just as much as our young people experience bullying at school, in the workplace, you can experience cyberbullying as well. And we all know that there are militant groups in this world which recruit and radicalize our young people, particularly the millennials. Groups like Al-Shabaab, ISIS, Boko Haram, and many other radical groups. They entice and woo our young people. I remember a few years ago, I was in the United States and I watched on television how two young girls were going to live incognito, leave their country without the knowledge of their parents because they were recruited through social media by ISIS. And thank God, at the immigration they were stopped, they could not go through. Now, how do we get these millennials to read the writings of Ellen White when they are bombarded and surrounded by all these influences? And this is the gist of my presentation. I want to submit to us this morning, according to Romans 3, verse 23, we have all sinned and have come short of the glory of God. All generations are fallible. Temptations assail all of us without exception. All generations are susceptible to temptation, including the millennials, including the new generation, the millennial Z, as I said. Millennials are more vulnerable because of their exposure to social media. When I grew up, there was no social media. As a matter of fact, when I grew up, there was no cell phone. I remember when I first saw a cell phone, I said to my colleagues, you know what, this thing should be very expensive. I don't think I'll ever own it in my life. Little did I know, 3 years down the line, I would own one. And you recall that they were so big like a brick, the first ones that came out. And whenever you had it on by your waist, you would walk like this because it was a heavy one. Now they've become smaller and smaller. They call them smartphones. We were not exposed to these things. But millennials are exposed to this. And we who are who belong to the older generations, we need to appreciate this. They are more bombarded by things that we never experienced. They are exposed to virtual pressure. And therefore, I want to say to us this morning as a challenge as well, millennials need our help to cope with these things, with these pressures. Remember the fundamental beliefs 11 and 18? As Adventists, we affirm the gift of prophecy. This gift of prophecy is manifested in the scriptures as well as the writings of Ellen G. White. We all know that true freedom comes when we have a meaningful relationship with Jesus Christ. Spiritual vibrancy can only be achieved through prayer, Bible study, or Bible reading, and participation in the mission of the church. What I've just mentioned, these are old and tested ways of solidifying your faith, of experiencing a robust bond with Jesus Christ. Millennials need to be helped to embrace these values. This is no longer the time to decry youth delinquency. Very often we say, these young people are naughty, they are not listening. These young people are doing this, these young people are doing. I'm saying to us as leaders, this is no longer the time to decry that. This is the time for action. This is the time to do something about it. This is no longer the time to lament the hemorrhage in our churches of young people living in droves. No, this is the time to do something about it. Let's give millennials tools to help them formulate their own worldviews. Are Ellen White's writings or counsels to the youth of her time still relevant to the millennials of today? Let's revisit the three counsels, or these counsels that I shared with you earlier on, to contextualize them, to see whether those counsels she gave many years ago, are they relevant to our millennials today? Remember, we spoke about choices when it comes to marriage. Is that counsel, are those counsels that she gave on marriage relevant to our millennials today? Yes, they are relevant to our millennials. We want to challenge our leaders to go back to their constituencies and say to our young people, please read messages to young people, read letters to young lovers, and other books that contain counsels, wonderful counsels to our young people. Young people need help to make choices when it comes to the matter of choosing partners. Millennials are enticed by social media to fall in love with total strangers. Don't you think that the counsels Ellen White gave many, many years ago can help them today to cope with the challenges they face, falling in love with people they don't know? I'm not saying that people who meet on social media, their marriage will not last. And I'm not saying meeting your partner on social media is wrong. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, I was in Mauritius. I met this couple. As they were talking with me, I said, how did you meet? And they said to me, we met on social media. The gentleman is a Mauritian, the young lady is from South America, and they are happily married. But I'm saying they will need guidelines. Some young people are not as lucky. Some young people end up falling in love with people who are strangers, and they end up marrying people they don't know. Looking at that example of Lot, where he made a wrong decision, choosing Sodom and Gomorrah, can that counsel, or those counsels Ellen White gave to young people, using Lot as an example, are they relevant to our millennials today? Of course they are. Young people should seek the counsel of the elderly. Because Ellen White says, had Lot asked Abraham to help him make a decision, he would not have blundered. Had he allowed Abraham to be the one who makes the first choice, instead of saying, no, let me be the one making the choice, he would have been careful in the choice he had made. Our young people can learn a lot from those counsels Ellen White gave, using Lot as an example. What about idleness? The old adage is still true. An idle mind is what? The devil's workshop. Social media may induce idleness because you end up not wanting to be occupied with anything. You just want to access social media. Ellen White warns against idleness, as we have said earlier on, and offers guidelines to combat idleness. What about loneliness? Many millennials declare their loneliness on social media. Very often, I have an account on Facebook, and when I look at Facebook and looking at my friends who are younger, I often see them saying, at 12 midnight, I'm lonely, or I'm alone, can somebody chat with me? Exposing themselves and making themselves vulnerable to predators, people who may just pounce on them, and they may end up falling for temptation. Loneliness drives millennials to find social comfort in virtual friends. Let's expose millennials to Ellen White's counsels on loneliness. Guarding the avenues of the soul. Can they learn something from that? Social media exposes the youth to inappropriate visual materials. Unsolicited pornography just comes up on social media. Sensual music and evil innuendos are all over social media. And young people get these influences. There are no boundaries in social media. Reading the spirit of prophecy does help to escape these pitfalls. If we can help our young people to escape these by just going to the writings of Ellen G. White. In order for us to achieve total member involvement, TMI, church leaders should come up with creative ways of involving millennials in this initiative of winning souls. Soul winning is an effective method of solidifying one's faith. I've said it. This is the third time I'm saying it because it's important. 60%, if we did not know, 60% of the world church's membership are young people under the age of 35. This, what I'm going to read now, is information from one of the books from the youth department of the General Conference. The title of the book is Youth First. And they say in that book, the pioneers of the Seventh-day Adventist Church were in their youth when they established the church by God's leading. James White started his ministry at the age of 21. Ellen G. Hammond was 17 years old. John N. Andrews was 21 years old. Uriah Smith was 20 years old. The progress of the church in the past clearly shows that the involvement of our youth cannot be ignored. But we need to involve them after we've understood their mindset, after incarnating in their lives and understanding what drives them, what makes them tick. Our pioneers were young. The church was young at its inception. It is young now, and it continues to be young. We often say, and I heard this statement many times, young people are the church of the future. Well, that story is not true. Young people are the church of today, and of course, the future. Church ministries, when I say church ministries, I mean all ministries of the church, should collaborate to engage in intentional strategies to entice millennials to appreciate Ellen White and her writings. Continuous dialogue among ministries, that is youth ministries, that is where I am, and other ministries. And I'm glad to announce that 2 years ago when we were at the advisory of the General Conference, we met with the White Estate and we spoke to them about what we would like to see happening in the White Estate with regard equipping young people with tools that will help them to be excited and enthused about Ellen G. White. The White Estate has produced many books. But one thing that we shared with the White Estate at the time was that we wish there could be study guides on books like Messages to Young People. Because when you use a study guide, you are compelled to go through the whole book because you are answering questions. Study guides are important. I think if we collaborate as ministries, we will be able to help our young people. The antiquated English of the Spirit of Prophecy puts some of the millennials off. White Estate and relevant ministries should put heads together to come up with user-friendly resources that will help our young people appreciate the books of Ellen White. Millennials should be exposed to apps that they can download to their telephones and to their gadgets. And I love this app that we have in the church, Sharing Hope, because it has many books of Ellen G. White and other things, and I share that with young people. Dwayne Esmond, who works at the White Estate, says, if we want to get millennials interested in Ellen White, he says, we should seek transformational discipleship instead of behavior modification. I thought that was cool. Very often we use Ellen White as a stick. Transform, be reformed, change your ways. Ellen White says that. They begin to ask, who is this old lady they're referring to? She's not even found in the Bible. But he says, transformational discipleship is the key to helping our young people to fall in love with Ellen G. White. When they see in our own lives, when we model Christianity, when they see us embracing the spirit of prophecy, behaving like people who are converted, they will automatically fall in love with the spirit of prophecy. A balanced hermeneutic of Ellen White's writings will assist to attract millennials to the spirit of prophecy and the Bible, of course. Extremism is dangerous. Some among us, where you come from, you are aware of this. Some among us in the church, we have extremists, people who veer off to the far left or to the far right. This can also challenge our young people, because they get confused, which is the right interpretation of Ellen G. White. So I'm saying the correct hermeneutic of Ellen G. White's writings will help to guide our young people. It takes a millennial to reach a millennial. There are many untapped witnessing opportunities. Social media is one of them. Millennials should be encouraged to share quotes from the Steps to Christ, Great Controversy, and other Spirit of Prophecy books on social media with their friends. The more they do this, this will strengthen their own faith. Millennials should be encouraged to utilize social media as a tool for evangelism. Pujic argues that we should encourage youth to be digital missionaries. He says, who can be a digital missionary? DM in brackets. Anyone. The main requirement for any DM is their excitement about using the internet as a way to reach out to unchurched people in their language, in local communities, and around the world. Last but not least, we need to change our strategies if we have to get millennials to be interested in Ellen White and her writings. I want to argue for an intergenerational synergy. An intergenerational synergy. This is an imperative to win the confidence of millennials. The gaps that exist between different generations do not help in wooing, enticing, attracting young people to fall in love with God, with the Bible, and the Spirit of Prophecy. Dwayne Esmond suggests that the church should give millennials an opportunity to ask difficult questions about Ellen White, to which honest answers and responses must be given. Let's not defend her. Her books are there, her writings are there to defend themselves. We should not be advocates of Ellen White. Yes, there are times we need to be apologists, but we need to be careful that we do not protect Ellen White as if she cannot protect herself or her writings can't protect. By the way, she was inspired by God. So the one who has inspired her to write these things is the one we need to be aware of and make sure that we do not protect Ellen White. Let us not portray Ellen White as an infallible being, because when we do that, we may give the impression that Ellen White was like a god. Let's portray her as a human being. May God bless you.